Welcome to the Animation Podcast, an official podcast of FilmBook. The Animation Podcast is a weekly animation news podcast that reports on the latest animation movie and TV show news.
You know, I just got home, I found all my shirts, and I must have a family of moths or shoemaker elves or something, because I have all these holes where I used to have fabric in my nice shirts. So, if you wanted a visual of what I look like right now, just know that I look like garbage. Hey, welcome back to the Animation Podcast, a weekly podcast about all things animation, brought to you by FilmBook. My name is Ephraim. If you are tuning into the Animation Podcast for the first time, what I do on this show is discuss the current week's animation news. Find more of the Animation Podcast episodes on FilmBook. That's film-book.com by searching the term, you guessed it, the Animation Podcast. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes or another podcasting service, please rate and review this episode. If you are listening to this podcast on YouTube, please like our videos, subscribe, and consider becoming one of our patrons on Patreon at patreon.com/FilmBook. Your support helps us create more engaging content. And I was so excited last time. I got like seven likes on the podcast. That was such validation for my little garbage brain. Hey gang. So as most platforms and networks have started winding up for that mid-November / Christmas season release schedule, we've reached kind of an interesting lull in the animation news and trailers. We're not getting so much news, but we are getting releases. So I'll talk a little bit about more shows that have come out further on down when we get into the bigger news. But I'll talk a little bit about what we've got here. That being said, it's not going to be any nonstop reporting from me. I'm going to give you the important updates that you need to know, even if I have to make things up. I'm just kidding. I'm not making things up. It's just going to be a heavy Ephraim jokes and takes today. So without further ado, in top news, following the announcement of the Illumination Mario casting of Chris Pratt, everyone's favorite Star-Lord has materialized in an even stranger role, that of Garfield. Yes, you heard me right. Garfield, the orange lasagna-loving cat, will be voiced by Chris Pratt in Alcon Entertainment's upcoming reboot of the character. When asked if he would play the role with a sardonic, Monday-hating accent, Chris Pratt said, "No, he's normal now." No, okay, I'll stop. I really will. I'm just kidding, you guys. That was about Mario. Now, look. It could be argued that Chris Pratt is maybe better suited for Garfield than he is for Mario. But if we looked at the guy's body of work, right? His most successful turns, at least in my opinion, I don't think I'm alone in this, are those of kind of a goofier, well-meaning charmer, like we see in Parks and Rec or in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's done kind of dramatic stuff, but it's mostly in like an action setting. Think Tomorrow War, think Jurassic World. I don't know. I never thought he was as interesting in that as he is in kind of the fun stuff. But so it's not to say that Garfield doesn't have a heart or that Pratt can't be serious, but it seems like it's going to be a big question mark what his take on like the signature dry downer that is Garfield. I feel like they're not exactly playing to their strengths in this pairing. But look, I'm welcome to being surprised. The movie is being directed by Mark Dindal. You might know him from being the writer-director on movies like Emperor's New Groove and Chicken Little. And the script is being penned by David Reynolds, whose brain gave us classics like Finding Nemo and Atlantis. I think Dindal here is a particularly exciting pick, because I think an Emperor's New Groove type take or tone is a great match with something like Garfield. So let's hope Alcon doesn't just give him all this studio interference that he got with Chicken Little. Alcon is also an interesting player in all this. They have never done an animated movie, at least from my understanding. I've done a bit of research on them. It doesn't look like that. They mostly do kind of jokey, tonally strange, not tonally strange, but like, I don't know, if you like Racing Stripes is from them. That's what I know them by. So lighthearted, but kind of inspiring. So we're just gonna have to wait and see what they give us. I'm not gonna discount them just yet. They've got some hits on their hand. We'll just have to wait and see. DNEG Animation will produce and animate this one as well, if you know them. In other big news regarding cartoon pets, hot off their summer box office hit, Paw Patrol the movie, the people over at Spin Master have announced that they are already in development for a sequel film, aptly titled Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. They obviously didn't waste any time coming up with the name. The first movie was the 6th highest grossing animated family film of the year. That raked in $40 million nationally and $135 million worldwide. That is over 5 times its initial budget of $26 million. Spin Master and Nickelodeon are so confident in Paw Patrol's ability to bring in money that at the same time as the sequel to the movie being announced, they have also announced that they will be making a spin-off series about one of the movie's main characters. The animation director Cal Brunker has been, he worked on the first movie, and you also probably know him from something like The Nut Job 2. He is going to return to direct this sequel. So whether you're a fan of the series or not, you have to kind of admit it's looking very good to be on Team Paw Patrol right now. Oh boy. All right. Let's move into some streaming and network news, eh? Let's give it a go. In the culmination of what I told you about last week, Netflix has given us the premiere of the 5th season of Big Mouth, its hit animated comedy. I'm not going to dive too much into this one just yet. I want to finish watching it and give you guys a proper review maybe next week. But I will say that they've got some pretty great guest stars this time around, with Pamela Adlon, Keke Palmer. Kristen Schaal makes a really funny cameo that I'm not going to spoil for you. And they even have Kumail Nanjiani playing himself. So I would check it. Look, if you're not a Big Mouth fan, wait till next week. I'll give you my thoughts on whether you should check it out or not. But I urge those of you who have been following the show to, give it a watch this week with me, and we'll see what we think next week. In Disney news, the company has greenlit a new series for Natasha Clyne called Primos, which is Spanish for cousins. It's based off of Clyne's experiences growing up in an extended multicultural Mexican-American family. You might know Clyne from her work as a director on the other Disney show, Big City Greens, or from, ironic or weirdly enough, directing some of the South Park episodes. It's funny to think of South Park or a director from South Park getting their own Disney show, but Clyne has more than proven herself for the job. We don't have a time frame on when we're going to get this show, but we do know that the episodes will be broken down into 2 11-minute stories. So if you're looking for something, to diversify your content viewing, Clyne is I think she's a really exciting new creator in this world. I'd say give it a, keep an eye out for this one. Also, this week on Hulu, we received the 2nd season of Animaniacs. I'm not going to review this one either. Well, maybe I will. Animaniacs is much more of a show I casually throw on and kind of turn my brain off while I watch. But if you guys listening would like to see a formal reaction to the series, I can give it a shot. We'll see. Also, keep in mind that later this month, on the 17th, we get Marvel's Hit Monkey. I'm going to keep pushing this one until I am proven wrong. I'm excited for it. It could, I don't know. I like the idea. I think it's a direction I'd like Marvel to kind of move into. So we'll see that. Lastly, on HBO Max, in line with the in line with the streaming platforms' push to diversify their content and reach a larger Latin audience worldwide, we are now seeing a new musical series from the likes of Arturo Ambriz and the brothers Roy called Frankelda's Book of Spooks. I like that name so much. I think that's really funny. It's an incredibly charming stop motion show about Frank Kelda, who is a ghost writer, emphasis on the ghost, but ching, who each episode she dives into her possessed and cranky talking book of scary stories and scares us with a new frightening but kid-friendly tale. It's right out of the world of like Paranorman or Frankenweenie, but it's episodic and maybe meets something kind of like Goosebumps. This is totally something I would watch as a kid. So if you've got some kiddos at home or you're just a fan of the macabre or that kind of tone, I would check it out. It looks really fun. It looks cool. And if we're talking about cool things, I can't go very far without talking about the new Crunchyroll news. In the world of anime, Crunchyroll is giving us a fall season gift in the form of multiple new dubs for your favorite new series. Multiple series, I'll say that. Including Platinum End, the newest show from the creators of Death Note, which has me particularly excited since Death Note is one of my favorite stories ever, until it got to the later seasons. But I really do like Death Note. If you don't already know Platinum End, it's a show about a student named Mirai Kakehashi, who is saved from a suicide attempt by a guardian angel named Nase, Nasse. That's how you spell it. Nase does more than just save the young man, however, as he's enlisted into a candidacy program to be the next incarnation of God, who retires in 1,000 days. Clearly kind of in the realm of Death Note. Those guys love to write and play God, and it just gets me excited to think that they're taking it to the nth degree this time around. Nth being a very clear pun for those who know it. We're also receiving some other shows that are getting some English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German dubs, and these include Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro. It's a rom-com about a student who loves flirting and leading on her group of male friends. Then we have Sakugan, an action-adventure where a father-daughter team pilot a mech to explore this mysterious place called the Labyrinth, where they fight monsters. It's a very cool show. Big monsters, big machines. And it wouldn't be the anime segment without a show with a ridiculously not long name. So we have a new dub for the show. The world's finest assassin gets reincarnated in another world as an aristocrat, whose plot I don't think I need to summarize. Lastly, in Crunchyroll news, the streaming platform announced the production of an English dub for Odd Taxi, a show about a cab driver in a world of anthropomorphized animals who get stuck in a noir-type mystery in Tokyo's seedy underbelly. We should be expecting to see that, they're saying, January of 2022. So get excited. I like the art style for this one. It seems, there's a lot of shows about kind of human animal, hybrid. I don't want to say hybrids because they're animals, but this one looks kind of, I don't know, it looks cool. It seems kind of like Taxi Driver obviously Taxi meets BoJack. I don't know. I love BoJack, so maybe that'll be it. Okay, so moving on. In animation around the world, we have exciting news from the Norwegian animation company Microfilm. The trailer for their first ever feature film, Titina, released this past week. It wasn't really a trailer, it was more of a clip. You can watch it if you look up, it's Titina, if you want to look it up for yourselves. I liked it. I'll go into that right now. The movie recounts the real-life story of a 1920s expedition to the North Pole conducted by a Norwegian explorer named Roald Amundsen, and an Italian pilot and aviator, Umberto Nobile, and Nobile's pet dog, Titina, for whom the movie is named. This may be the studio's first feature-length, but animation snobs will no doubt recognize the name, as the studio was responsible for the Academy Award-winning short The Danish Poet in 2007. The movie is also being co-produced by VV Films in Brussels, Belgium, a studio that you also, if you were a snob like me, you may also know, as they've also received a fair amount of Oscar noms with films like The Triplets of Belleville and The Secret of Kells. this might be one to watch, gang. I don't know if it'll be out in time for next year's Oscars, but the year after that would be... I have high hopes for these folks. They've done well. And over in China, speaking of doing well, the multinational conglomerate company Tencent Holdings has bought up 6.86% of Japan's Katakawa Media Corporation, guzzling up approximately 4.86 million shares of the company. This is a lot of mumbo-jumbo and numbers. Stick with me here. This is going to be pretty interesting coming pretty soon. Tencent is a huge titan in all things Chinese entertainment, producing not only shows and movies, but also all sorts of new tech and artificial intelligence. Katakawa is equally as large, responsible for shows like Sword Art Online and Overlords, as well as video games and manga. It's a big, these are two very big companies. This is an exciting move for anybody in China right now, and probably in Japan. Also, it's exciting for everybody, but it's an exciting move because there is a huge market in China for foreign content, particularly anime. Currently, China regulates how much outside media can be mass-marketed within the country lines as a way to keep focus purely on homegrown Chinese entertainment. But what Tencent is doing here is a very clever little loophole in the system. They've bought just enough shares of Katakawa that the shows being produced moving forward can be considered co-productions and joint properties between the two conglomerates, which would allow them to be seen and marketed in China and Japan without the foreign regulation from either country. It remains to be seen what other repercussions this might have moving forward, but it's exciting for two things. It's exciting that China is more actively looking to collaborate internationally, but it's also exciting to see this kind of partnership being formed. I don't know. It's something interesting to keep an eye on. Okay, so that's it for international news. Now, I actually have some home video and digital HD release news, gang. I have it. If you thought you could escape the patrol units and their paws in your own home, you would be mistaken, because continuing their hot streak today, Paw Patrol the movie was released on Blu-ray and DVD this week. Now you can show it to your kids, and they can watch it on repeat until the sequel comes out in a couple of years. Wow, it is a day for Paw Patrol. I guess it's like a millennia for Paw Patrol. Also, in the first time ever for me on this show, I am taking up an announcement predicted by a comment on last week's video. In a startling piece of premonition, Looney Cartoon Man 2003 foretold that I would talk about the new Tom and Jerry movie announcement, Tom and Jerry Cowboy Up, and he was absolutely right. Or, I don't know, you say you're a Looney Cartoon Man, so I have to assume you're a he, but I don't want to, it's never right to assume things on the internet. This week, we got the announcement that the Gray Cat and the Brown Mouse are teaming up yet again for a Wild West adventure that comes directly to video and Blu-ray, January 25th of next year. From the trailer, it looks like the story is going to focus on Tom and Jerry and all their animal pals joining forces with a ranch owner to keep his property against a greedy prospector type running around and buying up all the good land. So kind of think the plot from Home on the Range, if you guys remember that. I might be a little old-fashioned. You let me know what you think, Looney Cartoon Man. But I always get a bit of the heebie-jeebies when I see Tom and Jerry working together. Just seems a little strange. I don't know, but they've done it plenty of times at this point, I suppose. I'm sure we're going to get at least a little bit of that good old-fashioned cat and mouse chasing that we expect from the duo. And with that covers the news for today. But continuing our hot streak, just like Paw Patrol, I am yet again reviewing another movie from the Animation is Film Festival. This time it is Poupelle of Chimney Town, directed by Yusuke Hirota and screenplay by Akihiro Nishino, who also wrote the children's book that it is based off of. I guess it's more of a picture book than a children's book. Lots of people can enjoy it. More on that in a bit. It's from Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, and the Japanese dub stars Masataka Kubota, and Mana Ashida. I'm going to talk about the English voice actors in a little bit. I want to surprise you when I get to it, because it was a surprise to me, so I'll talk about them in a bit. But let's get into it. I'm going to be straight with you guys. Something about this movie just didn't work for me. And now I'm going to be curvy with you guys and say I'm not exactly sure why it didn't work, but I'm going to try to explain. I'll give you a quick synopsis of the story. The film is about a young boy named Lubici who lives in a steampunk city isolated from the outside world by a mysterious and ever-present smog made out of the soot from the city's thousands of chimneys. After the disappearance of his father, Lubici discovers and befriends a talking mechanical man made entirely out of garbage and scrap metal, whom he names Poupelle, a character from the stories his father used to tell him. It's pretty by-the-books story of kids partnering up with creatures that society won't accept. If you've seen E.T. or Iron Giant, or hell, even Godzilla is kind of rooted in this sort of story blueprint, you'll probably see most of these story beats coming before they reveal themselves. That being said, it's a perfectly harmless movie with a nice message, and it hits those beats the way they ought to be hit. The fact that the story wasn't innovative isn't the cause for my, cynicism with it. I think it could be two things, and this is what I'm going to say. For one, the animation itself, while very, very faithful to the source material, felt kind of clunky and cluttered. And two, and I think this is probably the big one. I'm going to explain both. But it seems like the movie came from a team that sort of didn't care all that much to begin with. I'm not sure for certain, but I'm gonna explain this. I'm gonna start with the animation first. When I watched the screener copy of this film, I was already kind of at a disadvantage. So I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt, because I watched it, and to prevent pirating and malicious distribution, the screener I watched was fully filtered through a sepia tone, and the story is already about a society mucked up with pollutants. So watching the whole thing through a beige window made it particularly difficult to distinguish moments that I'm sure would have hit harder in full color. That being said, though, the character models and movements left me wanting more. Poupelle himself is fun to look at. His body is, they paid particular attention to his body, and it's fun to recognize all the household objects that compose him. But after that, the characters don't stand out much from each other. I mean, Lubici is fine. His movement is, a little stiff. But the town folks and the bad guys all seem like clones of each other. This is particularly apparent in the three, women characters that we meet, who all have the exact same face. Just, with different eye colors and hair. I don't know. It was distracting. The strongest part of the book, from which the film is based off of, is its set pieces. Chimney Town is admittedly, it's a marvel to look at, and there are several other locations and events that I won't spoil for you if you're going to watch it, but they're a sight to see. The film achieves the same effects when it tries, but I couldn't help but feel like much of this town looked sort of nebulous and watered down in the background compared to the vivid detail that the picture book sort of relished in. And since we're talking about the books, or the book, let's discuss a bit of what I feel might have happened from its journey from page to pixel. From first glance at this team, this really does seem like a labor of love project. Akihiro Nishino, the children's book original creator, is brought on board as executive producer, and he wrote the screenplay. And for those that don't know him here in the West, Nishino is one of Japan's biggest comedians and is something of a household name. I'm always an advocate for involving a piece's original creator in any and all adaptions. I think that's something that very rarely happens in any significant degree in film. So seeing Nishino credited so heavily is a good sign. But it doesn't take a lot of digging to see that this might actually not have been the most helpful move in the long run. You see, when originally creating the picture book, Nishino rejected a traditional publishing approach and instead went for a crowdfunding route to publish it himself. And he enlisted the employment of 33 skilled illustrators and self-published the book himself. So even though Nishino is listed as a creator and illustrator of the original book, it's not so clear how much of the actual illustrating he really did. Furthermore, the book is very light on story. It being a picture book and all. So Poupelle is working with an executive producer for an animation when he might not have had any hands-on experience with the actual making of the art, and a screenwriter from the book that didn't actually have much writing in it at all. This is a perfect storm for a committee of studios and producer types to come in and make a very safe, commercially friendly product, following all the rules in the book, but might ultimately feel a little soulless and directionless in the end. That's just my little tin hat theory here. If you have any way of debunking it, please do. Make a complete fool of me in the comments. We need comments in the comments section. Okay, some last couple of thoughts on this movie. There are like 4 different montages in this film, and we only needed like maybe one. There was a moment in this actually got me, like, I said this out loud. There was a moment where it started into a montage, and it showed us footage from a scene that had just happened, like, 7 minutes beforehand. The music is a real highlight. Yuki Kojima and Yuta Bando, the 2 composers for the movie, have a really big hand in why all the story's emotional beats work. There's also a pretty cool minecart scene it's like a minecart through an abandoned tunnel sequence that the movie pulls off pretty well. I think I've seen that exact thing like 50 different times in 50 different kids movies at this point, but Poupelle finds a way to make it seem like a little fresh. And lastly, the English cast stars Stephen Root and Tony Hale. And I'm telling you this now because I watched the whole thing, and almost the entire time I was distracted thinking, is that Stephen Root and Tony Hale? No, that couldn't possibly, but it sounds like them, and then it was them. So, look, I'm going to be a snob today. In honor of Paw Patrol, I'm going to be a snob, and I'm going to give this movie a 2 out of 5. I could probably be argued with to make it a little higher, but right now, as I'm recording this, I feel like it really didn't land or register with me much more than that. All right. Do I have time? I have a little bit of time left to talk about recommendations for the week, so I'm going to continue talking about... I'm going to finish up my thoughts on Inside Job because I watched the rest of it, and then I'm going to recommend I'm going to recommend a show to you that I have just discovered that I'm liking a lot. Okay, so Inside Job... I finished watching it. Last week, I might have been a little hard on it. But also, yeah, so, like, it starts getting... I'm so frustrated today. Maybe I'm just a snob and I'm angry. I watched the rest of it, and there are definitely some episodes that stand out. There's a really funny... The episode that comes to mind, there's 2 that made me laugh. There's an episode where the main character, Reagan, and Brett go to the moon to, like, assassinate a moon colony up there. And there's some good kind of there's, like, a lot of interesting kind of characterization for Reagan there. I thought that was interesting. But I got frustrated because I don't want to spoil stuff, but they had this whole route, that episode, where they talked about what would be ultimately like a game changer for the character. That would be something like, I don't know, like we would have to think a little more about her relationship to her father and her friends and who she is. And they lead us down this path where it's going to be like that. And then at the very last minute of the episode, that's me snapping, if you can hear me snapping there. The very last minute of the episode, they revert back to the status quo. And I get that you maybe have to do that, but it was such kind of like a pull the rug out underneath you kind of, it felt like frustrating. I was like, oh, you're better than that. You set up a whole thing. It wouldn't have had to change that much. It bugged me. But it is a funny episode. And then there's a funny episode about them they go, they have like they go on a cruise for the main character's mom's having a wedding to herself. So I'm laughing now explaining that. So this is a funny episode, and they have to deal with a flat earther society there. I liked that, but yeah, I get frustrated with the show. Seems kind of scared to ever really characterize its characters. That's annoying that I keep saying that, but it's true. Like, they even call themselves out on it at one point. Like, they have a point where, like, one of the characters, the guy who makes all the poisons and drugs, and he's kind of a stoner. He's kind of like a whack job addict. And they just call him out on, like, yeah, that's your character. That's all you are. And it would be funny if he was, like, more than that, and it's like, oh, his friends don't see him as anything but that. But no, they're right. He is just that. That's all he ever is in this show. So, look, maybe people would like it. I'm not saying it's terrible. I get frustrated at what could have been. I usually don't do this, but I finished recording this episode, and then I realized that I wanted to talk a little bit more about Inside Job. The finale is very good. I think I will catch some flack if I don't say that the finale is very good. I think it's one of the more interesting episodes. It's when the characters certainly are, like, the most themselves, so the finale is very good. But even that, they make it interesting, they make the character do an interesting thing, the main character, Reagan. They make her have an interesting choice by the end of the episode, and then, in the last 2 seconds, it doesn't matter anymore. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say on it. I think it's got some strange values in remaining semi kind of permanent, evergreen, and semi kind of not. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, moving on. Okay, finishing up. I've only just recently started watching this, but I want to recommend it because, one, I don't recommend a lot of anime on this show, and I feel like I should, and two, I feel like it's kind of in line with the theme, or at least one of the stories of the episodes, because it's an anime that originated in China. So it's Scissor 7, or if you know the Chinese version, it's Killer 7. It's on Netflix. It's created by Zhou Feng He. I'm really gonna, like, brutalize these names. I'm sorry. But Zhou Feng He, it stars Ronnie Cheng, Jazz Patrick, Alex Lee, and Jake Green. You guys might already know that it's already got 3 seasons. I had never heard of it before, but I really, really love the tone of this show. It's got, like, I'll give you a brief synopsis of it. There's a character, his name is Seven. He's sort of a down-on-his-luck guy, but he lives in a world, in this kind of incarnation of our world, where a kind of a real career path is to become a hired killer, an assassin. And there's 2 routes to go. You can, like, do it on your own, or you can join with the government and whatnot. And he has this, like, boss who's a bird. It feels very much like One Punch Man or Bobobo, like that kind of meets No More Heroes even. But the episodes are super quick, like they're 16 minutes long, and I don't know, like it's never felt like, it feels like I'm watching a comic strip. I don't know a better way of saying it, because it doesn't feel like a manga so much, but it feels like a Japanese comic strip that was, because the jokes are really quick and they're fun, and the art style is really sketchy and loose, and I love that kind of thing. I love watching, like, they'll experiment at one, and you know, if you watch the trailer in it, there's a point where his face becomes live action, and that's really funny, and it's just so charming, this world, and plus, so you have all that kind of fun slice of life stuff. The action is pretty good. Like, he has the ability to turn into, he has this, like, gadget that he can turn into any kind of animal, or, like, I guess he can kind of do whatever. I've mostly just seen him do animals, but he can, like, turn into whatever he conjures up in his head. So he'll turn into a dog and bounce around people, or a rabbit, or, like, a gorilla or something like that. And that's real. I like that kind of stuff where it's just creative fighting and choreography. And also, he wields a pair of scissors. Like, that's his weapon. Because he was like a hairstylist. And that's, I don't know, I just think that's so cool. Like, he's got telekinetic powers over the scissors, and that's how he fights. And I just really like the innovative kind of style, pushing towards something that's not just guns and swords. And I don't know, I'd say go for it. I'd say check it out if you can. It's on Netflix, and there's 3 seasons to watch. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna finish you guys up. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Animation Podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe. You can find more of my work on FilmBook. That's film-book.com. Just search the term Ephraim Bernie or the Animation Podcast. You can also find me on Twitter at Frumblers or on Instagram at Ephraim_burning. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at podcast@film-book.com with the Animation Podcast in the subject line. Tune in next week for the latest episode of the Animation Podcast and all things animation. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you then!
Thanks for listening to the Animation Podcast. Find more of the Animation Podcast on FilmBook, on your favorite podcast service, and on YouTube.